Gracious God, you have called us together on this morning to praise you, to ponder your word, to seek your forgiveness, and to be strengthened to go forth into the world in your name. We give you thanks for being our partner in this world and in the world to come. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
What is faith? Complete trust and confidence in someone or something. Belief, conviction, hope. I have faith in a loving God who intends for all creation to honor life, to seek justice, to work towards forgiveness and reconciliation. I believe the divine force that shores up all creation has shown us in Jesus Christ how to live with integrity, how to live as God's faith-filled, faithful people. We are to love and respect God, to honor God, and love our neighbors as ourselves. Faith enables us to face danger, face our fears, and refuse to be paralyzed. One of my professors in seminary suggested faith was really more a verb than a noun. And he said Christians were called to faithing, to live our lives in ways that reflect our faith. Faith is actively living, guided by the principles of what we believe. So it's belief, but it's action as well. I don't know about you, but most of the time I live my life, I live my faith in ordinary ways, in the midst of life's daily routines. Faith, we know, comes as a gift from God. It provides the courage for us to carry on when we encounter situations that may appear hopeless. I stumbled on an inspiring documentary this week. I had been studying and came across a reference to this documentary entitled Weapons of the Spirit. The film premiered in 1989. Pierre Sauvage, the director, told the story of a farming community in the southeast of France, Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. Yes, I did study French. During the Nazi occupation of France, this remote town on a plateau in the mountains of some 5,000 people, sheltered and saved some 5,000 Jews. Truly remarkable. Sauvage, the director, as a child, along with his parents, was one of those Jews. He went back because he wanted to understand why the people of Chambon took on this formidable task. Most of the people in the town were Huguenots, Protestants of a Calvinistic leaning. When Sauvage interviewed them in the 80s, the remaining members of the community said they didn't think they'd been heroes. When people knocked at their doors, they simply said, "Come in. Come in." They said it was the natural thing to do. When strangers came, they offered shelter and food. If the people could pay them, they did. And I found this really remarkable. They asked no questions of their guests. No questions. These good people of Chambon didn't struggle or agonize about what to do. They simply did what needed to be done, offered radical hospitality. It helps to know that the Huguenots faced some 100 years of persecution for their faith in the 16th and 17th century. They were Protestants who had been persecuted by the Catholic majority. And they had a real appreciation for the Jewish roots of their faith. During these interviews, the director was struck by the serenity of the people. He remembered that one of his relatives, named Lizzie, talked about hugging one of these remarkable people, a woman. And Lizzie said it felt as if she were hugging a tree. The woman was strong, rooted in her faith, rooted in the faith of her ancestors, strong enough to save Lizzie. The remarkable things that community had done seemed effortless to the people of Chambon. They were not depleted by the risks they took, by the sacrifices they made. Instead, their efforts seemed to give them more and more strength, a quiet strength. They acted out of their own consciences and bravely broke what they knew to be immoral laws. Well, the town had two great leaders, men of deep faith. One was a pastor and one was a teacher. And I remember Sauvage talked about communities getting the leadership they deserve. These men were pacifists, and they believed that they were called to love all neighbors, all new neighbors, all forever neighbors, because they recognized these neighbors were so treasured by God. They refused to collaborate with the Nazis. They stood up to real evil. My professor would say they were faithing, actively loving, sustaining, forgiving. It was truly remarkable that the Nazis paid very little attention to the town. It was out of the way, not important. At one point, they did take over 2 hotels to care for injured German soldiers returning from the Russian front. But they seemed to keep to themselves. A man came to town, a stranger, who happened to know how to forge documents. And so, by chance, Chambon became a center for the manufacture and distribution of false documents. There was a very difficult time in 1943. The Gestapo raided 2 schools in the town which were harboring Jewish students. They beat 16 boys and one of their teachers, that man who was one of the 2 leaders in the town. They arrested all of them, sent them to concentration camps. We know the teacher died in the camp. It's uncertain the fate of those 16 boys. All this made me wonder about the neighbors who are so nearby, who desperately need our help. We people of faith don't need to go very far to come upon those who are struggling to survive. All around us, people are hungry. Hungry for food, hungry for healing, hungry for shelter, for companionship, and truly hungry for meaning in this life. We are called to represent or to represent Christ to our aching world. Someone is knocking on our door. You can be sure of it. And God expects us to simply open the door and invite them in. Thanks be to God.
Amen.